The history of the Harvest Fund, it began in 1990. There was a committee of people led by the former senior pastor Gary Langness that felt like they needed to create some new streams of giving for the congregation that were mission focused and mission minded. And I'm not sure who came up with the idea of having an endowment fund. That's originally what it was called, the fund. The name has changed subsequently to the Harvest Fund, but that group of people, in conjunction with the then senior pastor Gary Langness, wanted to look at ways that they could continue to fund additional projects beyond the regular streams of giving in the congregation.
Well, it was a vision, again, of the leadership of Gary, who thought it was significant to the mission of the congregation to establish an endowment, and he had a vision as to what that would mean to the congregation in the future and some of the things that we could accomplish with that endowment fund. When we started, it wasn't a very large fund, but we did have enough money to fund a few young people who were in the seminary and help with their tuition. But it has grown significantly since that time, and his vision was right on, and it's now doing the things that he had assumed it would do.
Some of the things that the Harvest Fund has been able to do, they established some set categories when the fund was created for youth ministry, music ministry, ELCA scholarships, global mission, Tumai University, and then there was a special needs category for Augustana, and then also an undesignated fund. So it allowed people some flexibility of what they would like to give a gift to, specifically if they had areas of interest that were of a personal passion for them.
To the extent that the Harvest Fund helps us participate in the Luther Seminary internship program, we get to help in the training of new pastors and leaders of the ELCA. It's probably just that extra little bit of funding that helps us do that. The kind of thing that we hadn't budgeted for, but it's incredibly valuable for this congregation, and more importantly for those interns who are learning to be pastors and leaders of the ELCA.
I think internship year is a really important year because it gives interns the opportunity to see what it feels like to be a pastor. We've been trained to know what to think as a pastor and given skills in our toolbox to be effective in parish ministry, but we need the opportunity to see what it feels like to put on an alb, stand in front of a congregation, and be a public leader for God's church. And so my most important learning was putting on an alb, standing in front of a congregation and saying, I'm here to serve God's church.
My internship helped prepare me to do that by giving me actual experiences. I feel that the learning for me really happened by doing ministry and by engaging actual people and taking what I learned in the classroom and applying it to actual situations. And here at Augustana, I had opportunities to actually apply what I learned and to build those relationships that supported me as I learned and as I grew, and gained a better understanding of what it means to be a pastor.
Interns at Augustana bring a new perspective, a fresh perspective in preaching, in sacraments, that, it opens our eyes that there is another generation of leaders coming, and that things aren't the way they always have been for me in my life as I grew up. So it's just great to have that flow of new ideas, new experiences, and new backgrounds. These interns come from all over the country. I'm very much a Midwest person, growing up in a Scandinavian neighborhoods, and that's not always going to be the case for our interns. So we get a new perspective from those future leaders and pastors.
I could not have come to Augustana had it not been for the Harvest Fund. I could not have served here and grown to love this congregation so deeply if it would not have been for the Harvest Fund.
Youth ministry's always been very vibrant in the years that I've been a part of it. And from opportunities like Youth Forum on Sunday mornings, we can do very different things with that. We've learned about our own faith a great deal, but we've also learned about other faiths, so we're able to respect them as well and understand what other people believe in. To other weekly activities like confirmation, there are so many things that I've learned through that in the large group with all 3 grades there, and also in small groups with our youth group leaders, to less frequent activities like trap shooting, being able to connect with young people and old people at the same time and learning things that might not otherwise learn and connecting it to faith at the same time. It's just a very unique thing that I don't think many other people get to do with their faith, is connected to trap shooting or paintballing. But they've both been great experiences for me.
I think one of the strongest points at Augustana is its youth program. At the time that Nancy and I joined Augustana, our children were beyond the youth program age, but as we joined here, we saw just the great numbers of youth that were participating in the program. We saw strong faith development there. These are kids that a lot of them don't need help in doing everything, but Harvest Fund can help some of those students some of those young people participate in something that they might be financially difficult to do otherwise.
Well, Neighbors was formed about 40 years ago by a group of churches when they realized that the meatpacking plants were going out of business and all these people were out of jobs and needed help, and the churches couldn't keep up with the demand. So these 6 churches in South St. Paul got together and formed an organization called Neighbors. And since then, shortly after it started, Augustana joined the group of churches as well. We have a food shelf, we have a clothes closet, and we have lots of other services that we provide to people in the community, like transportation to medical appointments. We have a telecare group that calls people every day just to check in on them, things like that. In the United States, 1 in 7 people live in poverty. In Minnesota, it's 1 in 10. I mean, that's people that go to school with our kids, that live right in our own communities. They're living in poverty and they can't provide food for their children. So that's why the relationship between Augustana and Neighbors is so important, because Augustana provides financial assistance, food donations that we just otherwise wouldn't get and be able to pass on to the community. Well, our relationship with Augustana has allowed us to keep the food shelves full. For instance, a couple of weeks ago, our executive director sent out an email to all the local pastors saying, we are really low in the food shelves on jelly and peanut butter and a couple of other things. 2 days later, we had a check from Augustana for $1,000, and we were able to go out and buy some of the basic things that we need.
People can contribute to the Harvest Fund in a variety of ways. You can give gifts of cash, you can give stocks or annuities, and you can give a gift while you're living. We do that every year on All Saints Sunday, and that's been a real joyful way, I think, for people to make a gift to the Harvest Fund in memory of a loved one on that very special Sunday in our church here, when we remember the saints who have gone before us.
When people give on All Saints Sunday, they honor the memory of a loved one, they honor the work of this congregation, they honor the way that they have seen the Holy Spirit active in their lives, and that is an incredible and beautiful thing.
Nancy and I participate in the Harvest Fund on All Saints Sunday. We give a contribution in memory and in honor of our parents. In a sense, we join hands with them in celebrating and fulfilling some of Augustana's missions through that funding. The endowment fund, we use the proceeds from. So it's those proceeds that can be used, in the present time as well as into the future time, to do some ministries at Augustana that we just otherwise probably wouldn't do out of our general funds. For both Nancy and I, our parents were very regular in church attendance and participation. So it's the experience of our faith story comes through them. And so we extend their faith story by participating in something like Harvest Fund, and that can go on forever.
The reason people would want to give to the Harvest Fund is because it's an opportunity to give a lasting gift that will continue to generate income after a person has died, in terms of a legacy gift. And it means that even though you're no longer here on earth, that you're part of the communion of saints in heaven, that you're still contributing to the work of the church here on earth. By leaving a legacy gift and by participating in something like a harvest fund or an endowment fund, a person can do that. And if you have a particular passion about a certain part of the work that the church is doing, you can say, I want to continue to help make sure that that happens, that ministry continues on, and that God's love and compassion is revealed in the world, even though I might not be here to see it face to face.
To quote a good friend of mine, giving is not a responsibility or an obligation, it's a privilege. And we have been so extremely fortunate in our lives, but to have the privilege of being able to support something that will help fulfill the mission of the congregation is very important to us.
You should give to the Harvest Fund so that the missions of our church can carry on, and not just for this year, but in future years and for a long time.
The Harvest Fund will provide Augustana an opportunity to fulfill its mission in ways that will be determined by future leaders of the congregation, as well as providing funding for traditional services, for, as we said earlier, for seminarians, for young people who want to take advantage of opportunities that will be made available, as well as things that are unforeseen and that will be determined by what's happening in the future.
The Harvest Fund will be around much longer than I will. It provides resources that I can't because it's an endowed fund. The Harvest Fund will meet the needs of special ministries that come up during the course of our program year that we didn't plan for, so that we can meet some of those needs.
The Harvest Fund will ensure that all youth have the opportunity to share their faith with others in various proportions and in various areas.
The Harvest Fund will allow young leaders in the church to experience the absolute joy of God's love in a strong, healthy congregation.
The Harvest Fund will help neighbors provide basic assistance to families right here in our own community.
The Harvest Fund will allow us to be a congregation that lives and serves in faith and in commitment to the call of Christ, wherever that might be.
The Harvest Fund will, I think, help to ensure that this congregation will continue to be a viable congregation and pursue its mission for as long as you can envision that we have a building here. I just think it kind of guarantees that the work that we've done at Augustana will continue for a long period of time, and that the mission will be fulfilled.
The Harvest Fund will enhance and expand the opportunities for this congregation to do God's work and God's mission in this world. It's critical that happens. This congregation has a strong history of stewardship and generosity. It's one of the core values for this congregation, and having an endowment fund or the Harvest Fund at a congregation like this allows us to continue to carry on that legacy as a congregation, a legacy of generosity, great generosity, one of the leading congregations in the ELCA in terms of mission support and giving. We're a nationally known congregation around the whole area of stewardship and a ministry of generosity, and the Harvest Fund will allow us to continue to do that in new and creative and different ways. It would be my hope that as a result of this DVD and some of the stories that people are hearing, we're hoping that people will consider giving a gift, a legacy gift to the Harvest Fund, that they would include Augustana in their estate planning, that they would include Augustana in their will, that they would include a gift specifically to the Harvest Fund, and knowing that it would be a gift that will continue to generate support, financial support for the mission of God's church here on earth. And it's a wonderful vehicle to do that, and we hope that you will consider doing that.